Context and Genres by Adam Gray. Context and genres are two parts of what makes up a film. In a sense, they're opposites. Genre relates to the film itself, whereas context relates to the world around the film when it was made. More specifically, context refers to the moods, attitudes, and conditions that existed in a certain time. There are three main types of context when it comes to films: technological, political, and cultural. Often, films are based on or changed by the context that surrounds their creation. For example, the Terminator, 1984, was linked to the technological advancement at the time. Black Panther, 2018, has ties to the ongoing racial prejudice in America. The Wild One, 1953, related to the teenage rebellion movement in the USA. Understanding films through contexts means knowing the conditions that surround the filmmaking, how social attitudes at the time influenced its content to help the viewers understand the film. Out of these three films, I will analyse two in depth, those being Black Panther and The Terminator, as I feel I can discuss these more thoroughly with relevance to both context and genre than The Wild One, because I am more familiar with those two, which will allow me to discuss them in greater detail. Genre is also very important when discussing films, as within genres there are tropes and stereotypes, which often show up in films that belong to the said genres. There are two ways to recognise genre, using formal elements or through narrative. These formal elements are everything that is put on screen before the shooting starts, such as props, lighting, sets, costumes, makeup, CGI, and even actors to a degree. An example of these could be from a sci-fi film. The common props are LED lights and blinking screens. These also fall under the sets. The lighting often involves lens flares. The costumes are often sleek and futuristic. The makeup is usually outlandish. The CGI is often in the forefront. A good example of a sci-fi actor would be Sir Patrick Stewart or the late Leonard Nimoy. The narrative elements are where the tropes and stereotypes of each genre really come into the film. Sticking with the sci-fi example, common tropes are sound in space, robots or androids, and space travel. Narrative stereotypes can be ones such as being lost in space, an enemy with far superior technology, something inherent to humans or the Earth which defeats the villains, and so on. It is important to remember that genres are defined by the film industry and recognized by the mass audience, which means the genres can change over time, adapting new tropes and stereotypes and dropping others. This also means that genre is simply a means of identifying a film's place in the industry. It does not mean that they cannot incorporate features that usually belong to a genre of a different film. Correction, a different genre of film. Black Panther is the story of T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman, the current king of the fictional African nation of Wakanda. It takes place after Captain America: Civil War, directed 2016, and the safety of the world rests on his shoulders when Ulysses Klaue and the previously unknown cousin of the king, Eric Killmonger, join forces to take Wakanda from him. Early in the film, it shows the coronation ceremony for T'Challa, where he is challenged for the throne by the leader of the reclusive Jabari tribe. Having his powers stripped so that the contest will be fair, T'Challa is able to defeat M'Baku, and then must go through the ceremony to grant him the powers of the Black Panther once again. Shortly after, he receives information that a criminal who had found the real Wakanda, an advanced society with amazing technology, had been spotted and left to hunt down Klaue. After capturing Klaue, he is broken out by a masked individual who is later revealed to be T'Challa's cousin Killmonger, who challenges him for the throne when he brings Klaue's dead body to Wakanda as a form of peace offering. Yet again, T'Challa's powers are taken from him so that he and Killmonger can fight for the throne. This time, Killmonger emerges victorious by apparently killing T'Challa by kicking him off of the waterfall. When Killmonger is imbued with the powers of the Black Panther, he decides to burn the flowers that contain the dew which grants these powers, with all but one succumbing to the flames, which was saved by Nakia and brought to T'Challa, who had been saved by the Jabari tribe. With his powers restored, T'Challa and his friends take the Jabari tribe in order to stop Killmonger's plan to arm all of the descendants of slaves around the world and use them to overthrow the governments and take over the world. The heroes emerge victorious, but not without loss. T'Challa then opens an outreach center in the neighborhood where Killmonger was raised. When Black Panther was released, it was critically acclaimed and considered to be one of, if not the most politically vocal Marvel film. Most of this stems from the character of Killmonger. As a child, his father was killed by T'Challa's father, and thus he was raised an orphan in a ghetto. This hard life is what is used to address the issues that are plaguing America to this day. The issues that it targeted were the terrible conditions that black neighborhoods are in comparison to elsewhere within major cities, the difficulties that black children and people face growing up in America, as well as extremism, and the history of slavery to an extent. Killmonger's plan was the same as his father's. The plan that got his father killed was to arm the people of African descent around the globe in order to overthrow their oppressors. Black Panther was one of the first major superhero films that had an African American lead, a step further forward towards equality. The way the film portrays Killmonger's goal and plan are to show that he had started with the right idea, but that it had been warped by his experiences and hatred. At the end of the film, you see how Killmonger changed T'Challa as he opens Wakanda to the world and opens outreach centers to help the poorer neighborhoods in major cities. The genres that Black Panther falls under are sci-fi, action, and superhero, the superhero genre being relatively new as it has come around with the successes of Marvel films being so commonplace that people have begun noticing tropes and stereotypes in them and other superhero films. Black Panther has some story points which closely tie to Todorov's equilibrium theory. The equilibrium is that Wakanda is hidden and T'Challa is the king. The disruption comes when T'Challa is seemingly killed by Killmonger. The recognition comes when T'Challa's friends inform him of what Killmonger has done and is planning, followed by the attempt on Killmonger's life by the Royal Guard still loyal to T'Challa. The new equilibrium is created when T'Challa kills Killmonger and then opens Wakanda to the world. It also has ties to a props character theory. T'Challa is the hero, Killmonger the villain, Wakanda/the throne is the quote-unquote princess, Shuri, T'Challa's sister, is the donor, and there remain two helpers being Nakia and Okoye. Okoye's lover, Wakabe, would be the false hero as he starts as T'Challa's friend, but ends up fighting for Killmonger after he brings Ulysses Claw back dead. And finally, the dispatcher would be Zuri, who informs T'Challa of who Killmonger is. There are elements of both realism and surrealism in Black Panther. Realism is the world that the film takes place in, which faces the same global issues such as global warming and overpopulation, to name a few. Difference comes with the fact that they have superheroes and organizations to help them through these. The caveat being supervillains tend to cause more problems than the heroes fix. These super beings would fall under surrealism. Unlike most Marvel films, this film has a traditional surrealist scene, which is the dream sequence when T'Challa undergoes the ritual to regain his powers for the second time in the film. In this scene, he is greeted by the previous kings of Wakanda, including his father, and told that his time has come. He rejects this and instead powers through the ordeal in order to fight Killmonger. The Terminator is the story of Sarah Connor, who is being hunted by the nigh-indestructible robot from the future, the T-800. The T-800 was sent to kill her in 1984 because her son, John Connor, is the leader of the resistance against Skynet in the future. They've been unable to kill him in 2029, which is why they resorted to time travel, Skynet being a self-aware AI hive mind that went mad and then began to wipe out humanity in a bid to protect itself. Her son discovered the plan to terminate his mother. To prevent this, he sent one of his soldiers, Kyle Reese, to stop the T-800 in the past. After being stood up on a date, Sarah Connor ends up in a bar watching the news, just as they run a story about two women who were recently murdered, both named Sarah Connor. After calling the police, she realizes that she's being followed by a shady individual, later revealed to be Kyle Reese, tailing her in order to keep her safe. The T-800 makes its way to Sarah's shared apartment, where it kills her flatmate, Ginger Ventura, as well as Ginger's boyfriend, Matt Buchanan. Just after Sarah's message to Ginger comes through the answer phone, alerting to the T-800 to its mistake and her location. The T-800 locates Sarah, but is attacked by Kyle Reese, who escapes with Sarah until they are arrested by police in an underground car park, where they ended up after a car chase with the T-800. During a police interview with Kyle, both Sarah and the police believe him to be crazy after he tells them where, or more specifically when, he is from. The police say they'll keep Sarah safe. In the meantime, the T-800 crashes a car into the front of the station and begins his assault. After the T-800 decimates the police, Sarah and Kyle once again escape and the chase continues. They eventually end up at a motel where they spend the night, make bombs, and get intimate, which turns out to be the moment John Connor, the leader of the Resistance and Skynet's worst nightmare, is conceived. Sarah then contacts her mother, gives her the number for the motel. Unfortunately, it was the T-800 mimicking her mother's voice, and he sets off after getting the address for the motel. Eventually, their chase leads to a factory where Kyle disables the T-800 at the cost of his own life. Shortly after, Sarah destroys the T-800 with one of the machines in the factory. The Terminator was released shortly after the invention of the internet, which sparked discussions on how far technology could go, robots, AI, and so on. The film takes these ideas and pushes them to one of the worst extremes, the mechanical uprising and the extermination of humanity. If this film were to be made today, it would be just as, if not more, pertinent due to the massive leaps forward in robotics that we have made in the last decade or so. The Terminator is an action sci-fi film. Due to its age, it is considered to be one of the classics that helps define these genres in modern times, introducing audiences to the tropes of time travel, mechanical uprising, and the self-fulfilling prophecy, John Connor's birth being a result of Skynet attempting to eliminate his mother Sarah. Looking at the film through the lens of Todorow's equilibrium shows that the initial equilibrium at the start of the film is with Sarah Connor's life being completely normal. The disruption is when the time travelers, the T-800 and Kyle Reese, come into her life. The recognition comes when Sarah realizes that Kyle was telling the truth about being from the future. The attempt to fix the disruption comes with the numerous attempts made to evade or destroy the T-800, which eventually leads to the new equilibrium of a pregnant Sarah Connor that is aware of the terrible future ahead of her. To compare the film to Prop's theory gives the conclusion that Kyle Reese is the hero, Sarah Connor is the princess, who later becomes the hero herself when Kyle dies. The villain is obviously the T-800, with John Connor of the future being the donor for Kyle's hero as well as the dispatcher. Sarah Connor is also the princess. Said it twice. The surrealist elements of this film all come from the future. Time travel, AI, machine uprising, and so on. Other than that, the film is fairly cemented in realism as it is set in a world identical to the real world of the same time. This film falls under auteur theory as well, as it was written and directed by James Cameron, one of the signs of which is a strong female character. For example, Avatar, Aliens, Alita Battle Angel, and Titanic, although this is one of the films that created this stamp. To conclude, genre is simply to make things easy to define for the greater public audience. It has no bearing on the creation of a film unless they set out to choose a genre beforehand. Context is of vital importance as it helps tie the film to the real world, allowing films to convey a message and hopefully help people generate opinions on these issues, using the wide-reaching influence that films have. Examples of this have been more prevalent in recent years: Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Black Klansman, but with 3 Ks, directed by Spike Lee. I think it's a comedy. However, it's important that we don't ignore the films that touched on these issues when they weren't at the forefront of public consciousness in order to make the film more groundbreaking or important. Alien, The Terminator, and many more.